All right, Creative Assembly has done a little bit of a release here, a little bit of a blog post on what the teams overall are working on. We know that many of the Creative Assembly Total War teams are siloed into the Saga team, the historical team, their new fantasy team, and their now new Total Access team. So let's kind of take a look at what these teams are working on. Obviously, the Saga team, and that's going to be a series of sagas to soon come out for Total War, Thrones of Britannia being the first one. But these are basically kind of small, microscopic looks at certain portions of the history on a macro level. On a micro level. So if we take a look at Thrones of Britannia, we're looking at a timeline that is similar or alongside Attila, but only a very specific portion of that timeline and a very specific geographical region of that timeline. So Thrones of Britannia, the Saga team's update obviously is that they are approaching launch here, and we can expect to see a lot more content, a lot more gameplay, and a lot more live streaming coming out as the game moves closer to its eventual release date. I'm actually kind of more and more excited for that. I really enjoyed watching Vikings and watching The Last Kingdom, which is basically, Vikings is interesting because Vikings takes place before Danislaw, and then The Last Kingdom takes place after, or actually right in the middle of, and then after Danislaw, which really set up the pretense for the very beginning of Thrones of Britannia. So while they're not historically accurate, they're really great shows to watch to get into the mode of Thrones of Britannia. But then we've got our historical team working on Three Kingdoms. Guys, Dynasty Warrior 9 came out, and apparently it's shit, but this is awesome. I'm already so stoked on playing through the Romance of the Three Kingdoms here. I think it's going to be amazing. June 12th, I think, is E3, and that's when we're probably going to see some more from Creative Assembly. I know that they typically like to go to E3 when they have big games to talk about. They did it with Total War Warhammer 1. They did it with Rome and Medieval 2. Shogun 2. So I'm very excited to see if we get some more around the June timeline of some more reveals from Three Kingdoms. If we take a look at the timeline for Total War Warhammer 2, it said, hey, it's coming out in fall of this year, back in 2017, a whole year ago. And they had a lot of really big reveals, faction reveals, namely, around the June, May area. I can't remember when it was that, when they had just the temples in Lustria, and they said, oh, countdown date. We're probably going to see a lot of the same timeline for Three Kingdoms. Three Kingdoms, we're probably going to get a lot bigger reveals around E3 time in June. And then we're probably going to start to get more and more fleshed out every month as we approach an August or a September, maybe even an October release date. And it depends on how many factions they do with Three Kingdoms. I can imagine maybe doing 4. Even though it is Three Kingdoms, so they could probably have a 4th, like the Yellow Turban Rebellion. I don't know, depends. But they seem to like to stick to 3 to 5, I guess, or I'm sorry, you can say like 5 or 6 in the region of starting factions, anywhere from 4 to 6. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with Three Kingdoms. But I'm very excited to see what we're going to get with that. As I said, development is continuing full speed ahead, and we'll have lots of exciting news to share with you chaps in the coming months. So I'm excited to hear more about that one. The Arena team, the open beta did just start for Total War Arena. I have personally not played it. I've heard some mixed reviews about it, but I know that Carthage just launched along with Hannibal. So they have 3 new maps and 2 new commanders, some custom battles, and a lot of changes and balances and whatnot. But if you have played Total War Arena and you enjoy it, let me know what your thoughts are. I'd love to kind of delve into it. I wish it was mobile. In fact, I think it is. It's not. No, it's 100% PC. I wish it was mobile because I'd love to just play that on my tablet. I really want like a really good, solid game to play on tablet. Part of me wishes I've got the Heroes of Might and Magic 3, like HD edition, but that's not the same, I just want something that's like a solid tablet game, and I was hoping Total War Arena would be it. Looks like it's more Hearthstone for me. But then, and this is going to be the bulk of our video here, the fantasy new content team. Basically, they're talking about Norska and just saying like, hey guys, yeah, we're still trying to deal with the botched up job that Norska was. It really fucked with a lot of stuff coming into the Warhammer 2 code base. But they're going to be, it says right here, in doing this, it has given us the opportunity to revisit a few aspects of the race and gear them up for their first tastes of sacking and raising the lands of the new world in the forms of new technologies and monster hunts. And we'll get to monster hunts in just a second. But they're also talking about, at the very end here, the most pivotal sentence of this blog post, for me at least, is we plan to tie in All of this with the next DLC for Warhammer 2, which we can confirm will be a Lord's Pack in a similar vein to the King and the Warlord for the first game. So we're going to expect a dual pack out of that. King and the Warlord as well did launch with some new units, so we did get a little bit from that, and I'm hoping to kind of match that with our whatever kind of dual Lord pack we get from Total War Warhammer 2. But let's actually, I think it was Flagellants and Blood Knights, I think, were the two that came with the King and Warlord pack. Let's go into the historical new content team. They're talking about the next kind of big campaign. They've already talked about Empire Divided, and they've talked about Desert Kingdoms. We plan to line this up with the next campaign pack that we feel will be a fresh take on a campaign pack for Rome 2, as well as every exciting feature for the free LC that will release alongside it. So we can expect some campaign packs, we can expect some free LC, and that's exciting because I know a lot of people were saying, I don't really want to pay for more campaigns in a game that is way older when I'm already invested in Total War Warhammer, or I'm really amping up for Three Kingdoms. I think this is their way of saying, or for Britannia. I think this is Total War's or CA's way of saying, hey, historical fans, we hear you. We know you guys aren't balls deep in the fantasy world like a lot of other people are. So let's try and give you something to at least say that we're listening and we are trying to provide you some content. So I mean, I'm all for it, even though it does kind of suck that you don't want to pay money on something that a game that's like 5 years old at this point. But the fantasy team pre-production, you know how CA likes to kind of like hide things in their words. This is, in my mind, very like, especially because I just released a video on Darklands. It's very kind of, it's very I don't know, they're hinting at stuff here. So currently in early production, it is dark and quiet in this team's corner of the studio. Visitors do not dally long. I think that's totally like a nod at Darklands, but that just could be me reaching at the fact that Darklands is kind of like it looks like it's smack dab in the center of the world, but in the actual tabletop Warhammer world, it's the upper rightmost corner of the world. You don't play armies from Cathay and Inn. They're not part of the tabletop world. They're part of the lore, which is important, but it's not part of the actual tabletop world. And it's dark and it's scary. It's terrifyingly scary in the Darklands. But then they've got the new Access team. So this is basically a way to reward those of you that are exclusive or members of Total War Access, which should be all of you guys. I mean, it's free. Just do it. I mean, get cool free shit for doing it. So why not? That wasn't like a plug. I'm just saying, why wouldn't you? But we'll see what they have planned here. Like they were saying, we're currently working on something exclusive for Total War Access members. We're looking at innovative ways to reward players for their continued support of our projects, and this team is creating something that does just that. So kind of cool to see that they're going to have a team dedicated to just kind of constant rollouts for the community in some way or another. But let's backtrack here. Let's backtrack, because I am the master of lore. That's not true. That's Lore Master of Sotek. But we've got this, right? The Lord's Pack, and we've got this, the Monster Hunts. Now, if we scroll to the top of this, we can see the new Monster Hunts. Hellpit Abomination, we can see a Frostheart Phoenix. Doesn't look like a Flameheart to me. So we've got already just a little bit of a preview for what we're getting with Norska in those Monster Hunts in the New World. So we can see those coming to life. And as far as what to expect from those Lord Packs, I mean, I've been trying to think, okay, what can they do? And if they're releasing a Lord in conjunction with a unit, they're probably going to want something that's like a King and the Warlord, where it's these two lords that are paired up in some sort of clever marketing way. One of the big, I guess you could say, threads that was circulating for a long time was 10-1, the Prophet of Sotek that we've talked about for the Lizardmen, in conjunction with Iked Claw from the Skaven. So what unit would be corresponding to them? So 10-1 would probably have something like salamanders, which are basically like flamethrower lizards. So dinosaurs that can basically just anti-infantry ranged, flamethrower all over the place, just like we have for the dwarfs. Or even Ripperdactyl riders. Now Ripperdactyls are different than the pterodactyls because the pterodons, I mean, sorry, even though they are pterodactyls. The pterodons are your ranged unit. Yes, they can get into melee, but Ripperdactyls are meant to be in melee. So you've got your ranged flyer in the pterodons, Ripperdactyls would be a really cool melee flying unit that's just meant to get in there and do some damage. I could see them kind of being in the vein of a carrion with a very high armor, maybe even weapon or armor piercing, because they talk about how their beaks are these like destructive, and not even like beaks, they're more like hammerheads. It's disgusting. These razor sharp teeth and everything, so I could see them just kind of ripping off armor and whatnot. But it'd be nice to see a low armor, high weapon strength, AP flying unit like a Ripperdactyl rider that kind of harasses the enemy line. And I think that's kind of an interesting niche that the Lizardmen don't have outside of their Pterodons. The Pterodons, of course, they can drop their fire bolas, they can get up close and personal, and they can harass the backline, but they can't do, in my experience, tons of damage in a melee environment. I think that Ripperdactyls would outperform, they do outperform them in melee and on a tabletop world. And Salamanders, I think, is a really cool way to give them some ranged anti-infantry when the actual range portion from an infantry standpoint, or I guess from a monstrous unit standpoint, outside of that big ol' sun sphere or sun, the sun pyramid of the Lizardmen, I just can't think of, it's not very wide. I mean, you've got the Stegodons, you've got all of your chameleon skinks, you've got your blowpipes, your javelins, but it'd be cool just to kind of have a unit that is just basically just spewing fire everywhere like the Salamanders do. And they were a pretty popular unit in the tabletop too, so it'd be kind of a nice nod. But for Ikit Claw, maybe it's going to be Ikit Claw, maybe it's going to be Thankful, who knows? What could be in conjunction with them though are definitely Rattling Gunners and Warplock Jezzails. I mean, yeah, you could also have like Armored Rat Ogres, but I think those two units, Rattling Gunners and Warplock Jezzails, not to mention the Mortars, are two of the most iconic units for Skaven, especially in the range department. And I'm not saying that the Skaven needs something like a Warplock Jezzail. I don't think that they're hurting in that long-ranged AP department. Cue their lightning cannons, warp lightning cannons. But I think it'd be really cool to see them because a lot of people expect those of the Skaven, and it's one of the cooler units. You know, this one Skaven's holding up a shield, while the other one's got a super long rifle that has got AP on it, and they look like these old school kind of flintlock rifles. It's really cool. I really enjoy the look and aesthetic of a Warplock Jezzail. Now, that does it for our two races. Both of our other two races, our High Elves and our Dark Elves. Now, if I were to put my money on any two races to release to get anything in this DLC pack, I would put it on, namely High Elves. Dark Elves, I don't think are in a bad place in the tier system of competitive play. In fact, I think they're quite strong up there with Skaven as well. But the weakest of the four, for sure, is High Elves. And High Elves, one of the biggest things that they lack is some sort of ranged AP, or even just a ranged stock unit. So there's two big options. As much as I would love for it to be Eltharion, because I think that the High Elves need a Legendary Lord on a monstrous mount, I don't think it'll be Eltharion. Like, womp womp. Eltharion would have to be released alongside of Grom the Paunch, because they're such an iconic duo. Like, they're the antithesis of one another. They are the ultimate nemesis. And I don't think that CA wants to focus on greenskins just yet. Maybe they'll do that further towards the cycle of Total War Warhammer 2 as kind of like an old friend release. Like, who saw Krell coming? I think everyone kind of saw Krell coming. But still, I think Eltharion's going to have to wait for a little bit, because I think that either Alith Anar or Alarielle are going to make more sense. Alarielle would bring our Sisters of Avalorn to the tabletop. Or I'm sorry, to the table, to the game. And the Sisters of Avalorn are going to be your ranged AP magic missile type range unit. And I think that'd be awesome. I think that's something that they desperately need. There's so much armor to deal with across the new races. And the only way that the High Elves can deal with that is right now in their lackluster bolt throwers. And their bolt throwers were actually way better in the tabletop than they are in this. You can make them really good in Total War Warhammer 2, but you really have to focus on making them good, which is pretty unfortunate in my opinion. So I think that the Sisters of Avalorn are going to be not only a really amazing looking unit with these bows that are like glowing with blue fire, but I think a really necessary unit to kind of help curb out the roster for the High Elves. Now, alongside her is, of course, Alith Anar, our Shadow King, as we've talked about. And Alith Anar would be kind of like I think almost like a Waystalker, but only High Elf. And he is, a Shadow Warrior special character, and he of course would bring the Shadow Warriors with him. And the Shadow Warriors are really cool because they would be a stalking type character, stalking type unit, but maybe they're going to be kitted out similar to the Shades, like they can have 2 weapons, or they can have a great weapon, and have them kind of be an anti-infantry or an actual AP unit, depending on how they're kitted out. I'd love to see that with the Shadow Warriors, because that's something that the tabletop didn't get with as far as the granularity or the actual customization of the Shadow Warriors. They're one of the coolest units in the army. They have some of the best backstory with their history coming from Nagarath, and how they're all these guerrilla fighters that every time the Dark Elves go to set foot on Ulthuan, they're always there to kill them, and always there to like put them down and under, and make sure to harass their supply lines and everything like that. They have this really amazing, rich history, and I think it's time that they enter the fray. They're just damn cool. I would really like to see a really fast stock unit to kind of help counter, or at least match the kind of ferocity that we get with the other 2 factions having their stock really strong ranged units. You've got those Chameleon Skinks, and those little bastards are such a pain in the ass. And your gutter runners, this would be kind of the answer to that. I mean, they don't have anything stock, period, in the High Elf roster. And the Shades are your stock unit across the pond with the Dark Elves. Speaking of the Dark Elves, let's talk about Hellebron, who I think is probably the most likely candidate for another legendary lord, because she doesn't fit the mold of the other 2. Malekith is this hybrid melee lord with a little bit of he's a dark sorcerer, so he's got casting, but I mean, dark magic in and of itself is not this like complete showstopper like death is. But you've got Malekith, and he's riding his monstrous beast here. And then you've got Marathi, who's on her Dark Pegasus, and she's a caster, is predominantly a caster, not a melee lord at all. But Hellebron would be cool as a pure melee lord with the chance to also mount the Blood Chalice. That'd be really awesome to get like the what's it called? The Altar of Kin or Blood Chalice going on the battlefield alongside Hellebron as part of one of her mount options. And she would bring either the Sisters of Slaughter, which are basically kind of, just think of them as, just the easiest way to describe it is a souped up version of a witch elf. So these are going to be even stronger versions of witch elves. Maybe they cause frenzy as well. Maybe they have even more poisons to take advantage of. Or Doomfire warlocks, which are really, really, really cool. And depending on which edition of the lore you're looking at, these are basically dark elves that have given themselves over to Slaanesh, but because in the 8th edition lore they haven't. I just kind of roll my eyes at that. But they're really cool. They're really awesome. They look really cool too. They're basically just like steeped in flames, just like the Sisters of Avalorn bow are. And they're a kind of a fast cav attack harassment unit, almost in the same vein as your chill wraiths, your chill geists. It's such a great name. Your hex wraiths. They had that kind of really fun mechanic to them. They were really strong in tabletop. They're really fast. They could like run circles around things on the actual board. So I'd love to see them coming into this roster. I mean, you could say maybe Charybdis would be one too, but I think that these 2 would be more fun than a Charybdis, because I rarely ever use the Hydra as is, and Charybdis, this is not something I'm clamoring for, that's for sure. But that kind of rounds out our video here today, guys. I'm not really sure how they're going to pair these lords together. Maybe we get 10 and 1 and Ikka Claw. Maybe we get Alith Anar and Hellebron, because Alith Anar stole the magic necklace that he wears from Hellebron's own court in the middle of one of her whole dance halls and everything. So she hates him. Or maybe Alarielle and Hellebron, because they are kind of like polar opposites of one another in a lot of ways. And Sisters of Slaughter, Sisters of Avalorn, kind of like a really cool handshake there. So there's a number of ways they could do this. They might even do Dark Elf to Skaven, or Dark Elf to Lizardman, or High Elf to Skaven, and so on and so forth. It doesn't need to be so cut and dry. So we shall see in the coming weeks here, it sounds like. I know that they said that we'll probably be expecting Norska in May, so we've got about 2 more months until that's going to land, and hopefully we get this in or around there, or at least some sort of mentioning by then. But thanks for watching here today, guys. If you're on the lookout for more announcements and other goodies from CA and other cool lore, go ahead and subscribe up. I know I'll be constantly providing y'all with that. But thanks for watching here today. Have a good one, and take care.